My name is Arden Whitaker. I was 32 years old when I stood inside McGee Tyson Airport in Knoxville, Tennessee, at 5:14 in the morning, watching my 74-year-old grandmother realize that the family trip she had paid for did not include her. Maribel Whitaker was holding my late grandfather Silas's old leather suitcase with both hands, the same suitcase she had packed for Paris because before he died in 2008, he promised he would take her there someday. She had given my father, Nolan Whitaker, $30,000 for that Europe trip. Rome, Florence, Paris, London, almost 3 weeks with the family. But when it was her turn at the airline counter, the truth started to show. There was no real ticket waiting for her. The rest of my family stood close enough to hear everything, but not one of them stepped forward. My stepmother Celeste adjusted her scarf. My Aunt Raina looked down at her phone. No one asked about the money. No one asked if Grandma was okay. No one even said, wait. What none of them knew was that I would not get on that plane either. I would stay behind with Maribel, and that one choice would lead me to the bank records, the power of attorney, the missing retirement money, the life insurance change, and the email that proved my father had never forgotten her ticket at all. That morning, I thought I was saving my grandmother from one cruel mistake. I did not know I was about to pull the first thread in a family lie wrapped around her money, her home, her mail, and her life. At the airline counter, names were called one by one. Nolan Whitaker, Celeste Whitaker, Raina Pike, Trevor Pike, Bryce Pike, Lena Whitaker, Evan Whitaker, the cousins, me. Boarding passes slid across the counter, passports were checked, bags were tagged. Everyone was half awake, holding coffee, adjusting scarves, pretending not to be irritated by the hour. Then the agent typed my grandmother's name. She typed again. Her smile changed first. Not disappeared, just tightened. I am not finding a reservation under Maribel Whitaker. My grandmother blinked, then opened the plastic travel folder she had been carrying against her chest since we left Maryville. She slid the itinerary across the counter with both hands, careful not to wrinkle it. The agent looked at the paper, then at her screen. This shows hotels and dates, but I do not see a confirmation number. There is no airline locator number, no electronic ticket number, and no seat assignment. The air around us seemed to narrow. My father stepped forward too quickly. That is the detail I remember now. Not surprise, not confusion, speed. "Mom, I must have missed yours." He said it calmly, like he had forgotten to pack toothpaste. Maribel turned toward him. Her face did not break, it only emptied a little. "Missed mine?" The agent checked again, then explained that the flight was close to boarding. There were no seats left on that exact itinerary. A same-day international ticket, if one could even be arranged, would likely mean changing the route and risking the connecting flight. She was polite, professional, uncomfortable. My father took that discomfort and used it like a tool. "Mom, we cannot make 11 people miss an international flight. Go home, get some rest. I will call you when we land in Rome and we will fix it from there." Fix it, as if she had misplaced a sweater. Celeste, my stepmother, adjusted the scarf at her throat. She did not look at Maribel when she spoke. "Europe is a lot of walking anyway. Maybe this is for the best." My Aunt Raina looked down at her phone. Trevor stared at the departure board like it had suddenly become the most important thing in Tennessee. Bryce said nothing. Lena opened her mouth, then closed it after looking at the adults. Evan, only 16, looked confused and embarrassed, trapped inside a decision he had no power to change. No one asked about the $30,000 Maribel had given Nolan. No one said, wait. No one asked if she was all right. No one suggested changing the flight, delaying the trip, or even stepping aside for 5 minutes to think. That silence was worse than my father's words. His words were a shove. Their silence was a locked door. My grandmother slowly pulled the itinerary back toward herself. She folded it once, then again, and tucked it into her purse as if manners still mattered when your own family had just left you standing in an airport with a suitcase packed for a dream. I looked down at the boarding pass in my hand. My name was there. Arden Whitaker. Seat assigned, flight confirmed. A place waiting for me on a plane my grandmother had paid to be on. I tore it in half. The sound was small. Somehow everyone heard it. My father turned. "Arden, what are you doing?" "I am going home with Grandma." "Do not be dramatic." "I am not being dramatic. I am staying." For a second, his face hardened. Then he looked past me toward the security line, already calculating time, optics, inconvenience. Celeste shifted her carry-on from one hand to the other. Raina still would not meet my eyes. My grandmother touched my wrist. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." They walked toward security without us. All of them, 10 people, moving together, rolling suitcases clicking over the airport tile, while Maribel and I stood beside the counter with Silas's old leather suitcase between us. Outside, the December air cut through my coat. I loaded the suitcase into my car and drove us back toward Maryville. The sun had not fully risen yet. My grandmother sat beside me with her purse in her lap, both hands resting on the clasp. She did not cry, she did not rage. That would have been easier to witness. Halfway home, she looked out the window and whispered that Silas always said Paris would look best at night. I kept both hands on the wheel. When we reached her 3-bedroom ranch house in Maryville, the one Silas had bought in 1986, I carried the suitcase inside. Maribel guided it to the hallway closet, set it near the door, and left it there, unopened. The coat stayed on her shoulders for several minutes after we were inside, like her body had not yet accepted that the trip was over before it began. I made tea. She held the cup but did not drink. Later, when she went to rest in Silas's old chair, I picked up the itinerary from the kitchen table. I had seen travel documents before. This one looked official at first glance. Rome, Florence, Paris, London, hotel names, dates, paid in full printed near the bottom. But there was no confirmation number, no airline record locator, no electronic ticket number, just enough detail to make a 74-year-old woman believe she belonged on a plane that had never been waiting for her. My phone buzzed. The family group chat had already started filling with airport photos. Celeste had posted a picture of herself with Nolan, Raina, and Trevor near the boarding area. Everyone looked tired but smiling. Europe begins. A moment later, another message appeared. At least the trip will be easier now. I looked at those words until they blurred, then looked across the room at my grandmother, sitting in Silas's chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap, the suitcase still standing by the hallway closet. I did not know about the missing money yet. I did not know about the bank records, the power of attorney, or the emails that would eventually explain everything. But I knew one thing before that morning ended. No one in my family seemed surprised that Maribel Whitaker had been left behind. I slept in the guest room that night, though sleep was too generous a word for what happened. The mattress was thin, the furnace rattled every 20 minutes, and every time the metal vents clicked awake, I pictured my grandmother at that airport counter, folding that fake little itinerary like she was folding herself smaller. Morning came gray and cold. I woke to the smell of eggs and the slow scrape of a spatula against cast iron. For a second, I was a child again, staying over on a Saturday morning while Silas trimmed hedges outside and Maribel hummed old hymns over the stove. Then the furnace coughed again, the room stayed cold, and yesterday came back. In the kitchen, Maribel was standing in her slippers, still wearing the cardigan she had slept in. The black cast-iron skillet sat on the front burner. Silas had bought it at a flea market before I was born, and she treated it like another family member. "You hungry, baby?" she asked. "A little." That means yes in this house. She cracked an egg with one hand, clean and practiced. Her hair was combed, the counters were wiped, the tea kettle was already warming. She looked like a woman determined to make breakfast normal because yesterday had been anything but. I watched her move around the kitchen and noticed what I had missed the night before. The thermostat on the wall read 62 degrees. "Grandma, it is freezing in here." She glanced at it without concern. "I run warm." "You have never run warm a day in your life." She gave me a small look, the kind that meant she heard me but would not be discussing it yet. She slid eggs onto a plate and added one slice of toast cut neatly in half. After breakfast, she rinsed her cup, dried the skillet, and hung it back on the hook. Then she opened the drawer beside the sink, took out her passport, and placed it inside beneath a stack of dish towels. She did it carefully, like putting away something fragile. Not hidden, just out of sight. The drawer closed with a soft wooden click. I turned away first. The refrigerator was almost empty. Eggs, half a gallon of milk, butter, a few soft apples in the bottom drawer, a jar of pickles. Nothing about it matched the woman who used to keep soup in the freezer for neighbors, who labeled leftovers with masking tape, who could feed 6 unexpected visitors without ever looking worried. On the counter, her pill bottles were lined up beside a ceramic rooster. Blood pressure medication, joint inflammation medication, both generic. I recognized the names because I worked around older patients every day at East Tennessee Medical Center. Generic did not mean bad, but I remembered Maribel once telling me one of her medications worked better under the name brand. She had said Nolan handled the refills now. The faucet dripped into a cereal bowl in the sink. Drip, drip, drip. Outside the kitchen window, the gutter over the back porch sagged under wet leaves. The porch railing leaned slightly away from the steps. The bulb above the side door was burned out, and judging by the dead moths inside the glass cover, it had been that way for a while. This was not like Maribel. My grandmother ironed napkins. She sent thank you cards the same day she received a gift. She used to scrub the porch rail every spring because Silas had built it with his own hands. She was frugal, yes, but never careless, never neglectful. I walked to the front hall where the mail slot opened over a wicker basket. It was full, but not with anything useful. Catalogs, grocery coupons, a lawn care flyer, an insurance advertisement addressed to resident. Nothing from a bank, nothing from Social Security, nothing from Medicare, nothing from an insurance company. "Grandma, where do your bank statements go?" She was wiping a clean counter that did not need wiping. "Nolan gets the mail most weeks. He said it was safer. Identity theft is everywhere now." "Does he bring your statements in?" "He handles those online." "Do you see them?" She paused, cloth in her hand. "He tells me what I need to know." I had heard that sentence before, not from her, but from patients, from widows whose sons had moved in to help, from retired teachers whose nieces managed the checkbook, from older men whose daughters took over because online banking was confusing. Sometimes it was love, sometimes it was control dressed up as love. By noon, Opal Granger knocked on the back door with a foil-covered casserole balanced in both hands. Opal lived next door, 69 years old, retired from the county clerk office, the kind of woman who noticed every car on the street and every curtain that stayed closed too long. Maribel tried to fuss over the dish, but Opal waved her off. "You sit down, Maribel. I know where your potholders are." After a few minutes, Maribel went to her bedroom to rest. Opal waited until the door clicked shut before she looked at me. "I was hoping you would stay a little while." My stomach tightened. "Why?" Opal lowered her voice. "Your grandmother stopped going to Cracker Barrel with the church ladies almost 2 years ago, said she was cutting back." "Cutting back on Friday breakfast?" "That is what she said, but she used to love it. She would get pancakes and talk about her students like they were still 8 years old." I looked toward the hallway. Opal continued. "Nolan comes by every other week, usually early. He takes the mail from the box before she is even dressed. Sometimes he never knocks." "Never goes in?" "Not most times. I see him from my kitchen window. He pulls up, gets the mail, sits in the truck a minute, then leaves. Once I saw Maribel standing behind that front curtain watching him drive away. The words settled between us. I did not want to interfere, Opal said, but I knew something was not right. I called my father from the porch. He answered on the third ring, cheerful in that tight way people sound when they are not cheerful at all. Everything okay? Grandma's house is colder than I expected. The thermostat was at 62 this morning. She likes it that way. No, she does not. A pause. Arden, do not start. I kept my voice even. Do you know why her bank statements are not coming here? Why are you going through her things? I am not going through her things. I am trying to understand why she doesn't seem to know what is happening with her own accounts. She gets confused. That landed harder than I expected. She taught third grade for 34 years. She is not confused because she asks where her bank statements are. You work around old people all day, he snapped. Do not start diagnosing your own family. Dad, I have handled this for years. Mom asked me to. You were not here for the hard parts. He hung up before I could answer. A minute later, my phone buzzed. Do not take Mom to the bank without me. I read the message twice. If everything was fine, he wouldn't care who went to the bank. That afternoon, while Maribel slept, I found the beige filing cabinet in the spare room. The drawers were labeled in her careful handwriting. Taxes, medical, home, personal. The personal folder was behind old Christmas cards and a photograph of Silas holding a paintbrush on the porch. Inside was a notarized durable power of attorney dated 2020. I read it slowly. Nolan Whitaker had authority to communicate with banks, receive and manage financial correspondence, pay bills, transfer funds, handle insurance matters, and represent Maribel in certain property and legal issues. When Maribel appeared in the doorway, I did not hide the paper. Grandma, did you know what this gave him permission to do? She leaned against the frame, suddenly looking older than she had at breakfast. He said it was just in case something happened during the pandemic, so bills wouldn't pile up. Did anyone explain the whole thing to you? Nolan said there was no need to worry. He said I had plenty. I folded the document and placed it on the table between us. Grandma, do you know exactly how much is left in your retirement account? For a long moment, the house was quiet except for the drip of the kitchen faucet. Then, Maribel looked at the floor and answered in a voice so soft I almost missed it. Nolan said I had plenty. I did not accuse him, not yet. I did not tell her what I feared. I only reached across the table and put my hand over hers. Tomorrow morning, we are going to Maryville Community Bank, not because I want to start a fight, because you deserve to see your own money with your own eyes. The next morning, Maribel dressed like she was going to church. She put on the navy coat again, not because we were going anywhere nice, but because that was what she wore when she needed to feel steady. I found her in the hallway mirror, pinning back a loose strand of gray hair with hands that moved carefully, not weakly. There was a difference. I was starting to understand that. Do you need anything before we go? I asked. My driver's license is in my wallet. My social security card is in the small envelope behind the recipe box. Nolan always said not to carry it. That part, at least, was good advice. Maryville Community Bank was 7 minutes from her house, tucked between a pharmacy and an old hardware store with a faded red sign. Maribel had banked there for decades. She knew which tellers had children, which ones had retired, which Christmas decorations had been reused every year since I was in middle school. Inside, the heat hit my face. Maribel took one step forward and stopped. I can do this, she said, mostly to herself. Yes, you can. The receptionist asked how she could help. Maribel pulled her wallet from her purse and placed her license on the counter. I would like to speak to someone about my accounts. My granddaughter is with me, and I want her present. Those words mattered. I did not ask for access. I did not speak over her. I sat beside her while she asked for her own information. A few minutes later, Renee Bishop came out from the back office. She was 44, polished but kind, wearing a gray cardigan over a blouse and carrying a tablet against her chest. "Mrs. Whitaker, it is good to see you. Come on back." Her office had framed certificates on one wall and a small candy dish on the desk. Maribel sat with her purse in her lap. I sat beside her, hands folded, notebook closed until she nodded at me. Renee verified her identity, asked a few security questions, then turned to her computer. At first, her face stayed professional, then her eyes slowed across the screen. She clicked once, then again. "Mrs. Whitaker, I am going to print a summary for you." Maribel looked at me, then back at Renee. "Is something wrong?" Renee did not answer too quickly. That told me more than a dramatic reaction would. "I think it would be better if we go through the numbers together." The printer behind her hummed. 3 pages slid out. Renee picked them up, straightened them against the desk, and placed them in front of Maribel. "At the beginning of 2021, your retirement and savings balance was approximately $218,400. Maribel's fingers tightened around the edge of her purse. "And now," Renee continued gently, "the current balance is $43,850. The office became too quiet. I heard the air vent. I heard someone laughing faintly in the lobby. I heard Maribel breathe in through her nose, slow and shallow. "That cannot be right," she said. Renee turned the first page so she could see it clearly. "There have been multiple withdrawals and transfers over the past several years. Some may have explanations, some would need documentation. May I take notes, Grandma?" Maribel nodded without looking at me. I opened my notebook. Renee pointed to the first highlighted line. "In March 2022, $12,800 was withdrawn with a memo for home repairs." My grandmother looked up. "My porch railing is still loose." Another line. "August 2023, $8,400, marked medical support." Maribel shook her head. "My insurance covered my knee injections that year. I remember because Nolan told me not to worry about the bill." More transfers followed. 3,000 here, 5,000 there. Amounts small enough to look ordinary if no one was watching, large enough to drain a life one piece at a time. Several were linked to accounts Nolan controlled or had authority over. Then Renee reached October 2025. $30,000, Europe Travel Fund. Maribel closed her eyes for 1 second. "That was for my ticket." I wrote it down, though my hand felt stiff. Renee moved to the next highlighted line. "There is also a transfer for $24,700 to Raina Pike. The note says kitchen repair help." My pen stopped. "Aunt Raina?" Maribel looked at me like she had not heard correctly. "Raina never asked me for kitchen money." Renee's voice stayed careful. "I cannot speak to the purpose beyond what is written here, but the transfer was authorized under the power of attorney on file." "Under Nolan?" "Yes." Maribel picked up the transaction summary. She folded it once, then twice, then again, until it was a small square in her palm. It was not confusion, it was containment. She was trying to make the truth small enough to carry out of that office. On the drive home, she did not speak for several minutes. Her eyes stayed on the winter trees beyond the windshield. "Silas died in 2008, she said at last. "The house was paid down but not finished. I started saving hard the next year. Every refund, every extra check. I drove that Buick until the doors sounded like they might fall off. I skipped trips with the church ladies. I told myself it was security." She rubbed her thumb over the folded statement. "Every New Year's Eve, I wrote the balance in a little notebook. I used to be proud of that number." I wanted to say something comforting. Nothing honest would have helped. At home, I called Dr. Sloan Mercer from the porch. She answered between patients, her voice clipped but focused. Do not request anything for her, Arden. Let Maribel verify her own identity. Write down what they are allowed to confirm, then get an elder law attorney. So, that afternoon, Maribel called Social Security with me beside her. She answered the questions herself. I only helped her find dates and documents when she asked. The representative could not give us every detail without formal requests, but she confirmed enough. The direct deposit destination had been changed in recent years, more than once. The changes were tied to paperwork on file. Maribel thanked her politely, then hung up the phone and stared at the phone. I do not know those accounts, she said. While she sat at the kitchen table with the bank papers, my phone buzzed again and again. Celeste had posted from Rome, then another photo from a wine tasting in Tuscany, then shopping bags lined up on a hotel bed. Her caption was light and bright, like nothing ugly had happened before sunrise at an airport in Tennessee. Living the dream. I looked at Maribel's thermostat, still set to 62. Then I looked at Celeste, holding a wine glass under Tuscan sunlight. That was when anger finally found a place to stand. That night, Maribel handed me her phone. If it has anything to do with that trip, I want to know. I opened the family group chat and scrolled back through the weeks before the flight. Nolan had sent a screenshot of the booking. I enlarged it and counted the ticketed passengers. 11, not 12. Maribel's name was not there. Below it was another screenshot showing business class upgrades for Nolan, Celeste, and Raina. The payment method showed an account ending I recognized from the bank papers. My phone buzzed with a private message from Lena. I'm sorry, I thought someone else would say something. I read it twice, then set the phone down. In the spare room, Maribel stood beside me while I opened the old desktop computer. The family travel email was still logged in. I searched Maribel itinerary, and one message appeared from Margot Ellis from Smoky Ridge Travel Services. The subject line was, Europe Logistics, Maribel's itinerary. In the preview, one sentence sat there waiting for us. Do you still want me to send her the printed copy without the ticket record? I took my hand off the mouse. Maribel pulled the chair closer and sat beside me. Open it, baby. I want to know whether your father forgot my ticket or whether he never meant to buy it at all. I clicked the message with Maribel sitting close enough that her shoulder touched mine. The email chain was not loud. That was what made it worse. There was no confession typed in all caps, no villain speech, no sentence that would make a courtroom gasp by itself. It was ordinary, polite travel planning, the kind of thing people skim without thinking. Margot Ellis from Smoky Ridge Travel Services had asked whether Nolan still wanted mobility assistance arranged for Maribel in Rome and Paris. Nolan had replied, "Cancel that portion. She will not need it." Margot asked 2 days later if he wanted to keep a seat for Maribel before the ticketing deadline closed. Nolan answered, "No ticket needed. Please send her the printed itinerary only so she feels included." Maribel leaned closer to the screen. "Feels included?" she whispered. Farther down, Raina had replied to the thread. "What if she asks at the airport?" Nolan's answer was short. "By then, it will be too late to fix without making everyone miss the flight." The room seemed to tilt. I took my hand off the mouse. Maribel did not move for several seconds. She just stared at those words, her reading glasses low on her nose, one hand pressed flat on the desk. He thought I only needed to feel included, not actually be included. That sentence did more to me than anger would have. It was so quiet, so exact, that I had to look away. I printed everything, The email thread, the itinerary without the ticketing record, the booking list, the business class upgrade receipts, the bank statements, the power of attorney, the notes from the Social Security call, Opal's written statement, screenshots of Celeste's public travel posts, and Lena's apology message. I did not post anything online. I did not call Nolan screaming. I put every page into a folder and labeled it with Maribel's name. Then I called Dr. Sloan Mercer. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, her voice changed from friend to physician. This fits elder financial exploitation, Arden. Do not confront him alone. Do not let Maribel sign anything else. You need an elder law attorney today. She gave me the name Everett Caldwell. Caldwell Elder Law was in Knoxville, in a brick office building with narrow windows and a waiting room that smelled faintly of coffee. Everett Caldwell was 47, calm, precise, the kind of man who listened with a pen in his hand and did not waste reactions. Maribel sat beside me with the folder on her lap. Everett read for nearly 20 minutes. When he looked up, he did not soften the truth. The power of attorney may be valid on paper. That does not mean your son had the right to use it for his own benefit. He had a fiduciary duty to act in your interest. Maribel folded her hands. Can you stop him from taking anything else? Yes, we can ask for a temporary emergency order. We can notify the bank, involve Adult Protective Services, and begin a civil recovery process. If the evidence supports it, there may be a criminal referral later, but that choice does not have to be made today. I watched my grandmother breathe through that. I do not want police dragging my son out of his house, she said. Not right now. Everett nodded. Then we focus first on protection and recovery. Maribel looked at him. I want my mail back. I want my account back. I want to know where Silas's money and my money went, and I want Nolan unable to do this again. Between December 22nd and December 24th, Everett moved fast. He filed an emergency petition at Blount County Chancery Court. Judge Harriet Lowell issued a temporary order suspending Nolan's authority to use the power of attorney for Maribel's financial matters. Maryville Community Bank was instructed to work directly with Maribel or Everett. Large transfers were restricted. No insurance, beneficiary, or property changes could be made while the records were under review. Adult Protective Services was notified for assessment. It was not a final judgment. It was a locked door. Nolan sounded out in Florence. My phone rang just after dinner. His voice came through sharp and low. What did you do? I stepped onto Maribel's back porch. I helped Grandma protect her accounts. You embarrassed me in front of Celeste. The card would not go through at the hotel. Then use your own card. You do not understand how complicated Mom's finances are. I understand enough. No, you do not. Your grandmother gets confused. You work around old people all day, and now you think every family is one of your hospital cases. I used that money for family. Then explain it to Mr. Caldwell. Silence. Who is Caldwell? Grandma's attorney. He hung up. The family messages started within an hour. Nolan told people I was frightening Maribel, that I wanted control of her assets, that ordinary family support was being twisted into something ugly. Bryce sent one message that told me everything about where his loyalty sat. Couldn't this wait until after the trip? Lena sent hers privately. I knew Grandma looked scared. I should have said something. By the time Nolan, Celeste, Raina, and Trevor returned to Tennessee, Everett arranged a meeting at Maribel's house. Opal did not sit in the room, but her statement was in the binder on the table. Everett set the binder down and looked at everyone. This is not a shouting match. Mrs. Whitaker is here to hear where her money went. Nolan sat stiffly across from Maribel. Celeste crossed her legs and kept smoothing her scarf. Raina looked pale. Trevor studied the floor. Everett began with the balances. $218,400 in early 2021, $43,850 by the end of 2025. approximately $146,000 in transactions requiring explanation, $30,000 for the Europe Travel Fund, no ticket for Maribel. Emails requesting a printed itinerary without the ticket record. $12,800 for home repairs that did not happen. $8,400 for medical support Maribel did not recognize. $24,700 transferred to Raina. Business class upgrades for Nolan, Celeste, and Raina. Nolan lifted both hands. This is being taken out of context. Everett turned a page. Then provide the context. Mom knew I handled everything, Nolan said. She trusted me. Maribel looked at him. I trusted you. That is not the same as giving you permission to take. Raina's name came next. Nolan said Mom wanted to help with the kitchen, Raina said, barely above a whisper. Maribel turned to her daughter. Did you ever ask me? Raina's mouth opened, then closed. Celeste leaned forward. Families help each other. That is not a crime. Maribel's voice was steady. Family asks before taking. I placed Celeste's travel posts beside the receipts. Wine tasting, hotel balcony, shopping bags, business class upgrades. Celeste's face tightened. I never handled the finances. No, I said. You just enjoyed what they paid for. No one spoke for a moment. Then Everett opened the final section of the binder. His expression did not change, but Nolan's did. There is one more matter. In 2024, Mrs. Whitaker's life insurance beneficiary was changed. The current sole beneficiary is Nolan Whitaker. That change is being challenged as part of the same pattern of financial control. Maribel looked at my father. For the first time since the airport, Nolan had nothing ready. My grandmother stood, slow but steady. She picked up the binder and held it against her chest. I want you out of my house, Nolan. Mom, no, you do not get to handle everything anymore. He looked around the room, waiting for someone to rescue him from the silence. No one did. Nolan left the house with Celeste behind him, Raina crying quietly into a tissue, and Trevor walking like a man who wished the floor would open before anyone asked him what he knew. Maribel stayed standing until the front door closed. Then she set the binder on the dining table, pulled out the chair Silas used to sit in, and lowered herself into it with both hands on the wood. I thought she might say something about betrayal, or money, or the son she had just ordered out of her home. Instead, she touched the edge of the binder and said, I want this done properly. So that was what we did. From January through April of 2026, nothing happened as fast as people imagine justice should happen. There were no dramatic arrests in the driveway, no courtroom shouting, no sudden miracle that put every dollar back overnight. There were phone calls, appointments, signatures, reviewed records, and long afternoons when Maribel sat across from Everett Caldwell and answered questions she should never have had to answer about her own money. Adult Protective Services opened an assessment using Maribel's statement, Opal Granger's written account, the bank records, the power of attorney, and the emails from Margot Ellis. Everett worked directly with Renee Bishop at Maryville Community Bank, and every record was handled through the proper channels. The insurance beneficiary change was challenged. Nolan had to explain transactions he'd spent years assuming no one would ever ask about. Raina received a formal demand to return $24,700 that had been sent to her under the note Kitchen Repair Help. Maribel chose civil recovery first. That mattered to her. She was not protecting Nolan from consequences. She was choosing the kind of consequences she could live with. In late April, the settlement was finalized. Nolan's authority under the power of attorney was permanently revoked. Maribel did not give full control to another family member.
Everett helped her set up limited safeguards, clear bank alerts, and legal backup that did not require surrendering her life to anyone. Nolan agreed to repay approximately $146,000 through a 5-year payment plan secured by a lien on part of his personal property. Raina was required to return $24,700. The life insurance beneficiary was restored as part of the settlement, this time according to Maribel's written instructions, not Nolan's convenience. Maryville Community Bank would send paper statements directly to Maribel's house, and no one else could redirect them. Nolan did not go to jail in our story. Some people may think that was too soft, but watching him lose control was its own kind of sentence. He sold the old boat he used to keep covered beside his garage. Then he gave up the timeshare in Pigeon Forge that he and Celeste liked to brag about during holidays. His small home repair business took a quiet hit when people in Maryville heard that the man who billed his own mother's account for home repairs let her porch rail rot loose under her hands. Celeste stopped posting travel photos. When people asked, she said she had never handled the finances. That was true in the narrowest possible way, and false in every way that mattered. Maribel mailed a cashier's check with a short letter. She read it at the kitchen table. She did not tear it up. She did not call Raina. She folded the letter once and placed it in the drawer beside the dish towels, the same drawer where she had hidden her passport after the airport. "Returning money is easier than returning trust," she said. That was all. Piece by piece, the house started to feel like hers again.
The porch railing was repaired. The gutter over the back steps was replaced. The kitchen faucet stopped dripping into a bowl. The burnt-out bulb by the side door was changed. The thermostat moved from 62 to 71, and for the first time in months, I walked into the house without keeping my coat on. The refrigerator changed too, not in some grand symbolic way, just in the real way that matters. Eggs, milk, vegetables, soup containers, apples that were still crisp, the good yogurt she liked but had stopped buying. Her prescriptions were reviewed by her doctor, not adjusted by whoever wanted the cheapest refill. One afternoon, a white envelope from Maryville Community Bank arrived in her mailbox. Maribel carried it to the kitchen like it was fragile. She opened it herself with a butter knife and spread the pages flat on the table. I sat beside her, but I did not touch them until she asked. "I do not understand every line," she said. "You do not have to understand every line today. But it came to my house. Yes, and nobody opened it before me. No." She nodded, and for the first time in months, that seemed like enough. Opal kept bringing casseroles on Sundays, though now she stayed for coffee instead of dropping the dish and leaving. Maribel went back to Cracker Barrel with the church ladies on Fridays. The waitress remembered she took her coffee with 1 cream and no sugar. A woman from her old Bible study kept a seat open by the window. When the check came, Maribel paid with her own card from her own account and tucked the receipt into her purse like a small victory. Not everything healed. I lost the father I thought I had, or maybe I lost the version of him I had protected in my mind because it was easier than seeing the truth. Thanksgiving would never feel simple again. Some relatives stopped calling. Bryce went quiet after his one selfish message. Lena checked in on Maribel sometimes, gently, without asking for forgiveness she had not earned. I thought about Evan, only 16, caught in the wreckage adults made. That was one reason I respected Maribel's choice to keep this clean, legal, and quiet. She wanted accountability. She did not want a public bonfire. On May 5, 2026, Maribel and I flew to Paris. This time, there was a confirmation number, an airline record locator, seat assignments, mobility assistance confirmed in writing. I checked the booking twice, then handed the printed copy to Maribel. She checked it too. The leather suitcase came out of the hallway closet.
Inside, Maribel tucked a worn postcard of the Eiffel Tower that Silas had bought decades earlier and never mailed. She placed it in the inner pocket, zipped the suitcase, and rested her hand on top for a moment. At the airport, she held her own passport.
In Paris, we stood near the river after sunset and watched the Eiffel Tower light up against the dark. Maribel did not say much. She did not need to. The lights reflected in her glasses, and the wind moved softly through her silver hair. I thought about the itinerary without a ticket record, the folded bank statement, the casserole on the porch, Nolan's silence when the beneficiary change was read aloud. Paris did not erase any of that, but it gave Maribel something back. She was not just made to feel included. She was there, fully, visibly, undeniably there. When we got home on May 9th, she rolled Silas's suitcase back into the hallway, but this time she did not push it deep into the closet. She left it where she could see it. Maribel did not get her family back the way it had been. I did not get my father back the way I wanted him to be. Money returned under a payment plan cannot rebuild trust on its own. A settlement cannot make a son worthy. A trip to Paris cannot undo an airport in Knoxville. But my grandmother got her mail back, her account back, her house back, her choices back. She knew where her money was, where her statements went, what her tickets said, and who would stand beside her when the room went quiet. For a woman her own family tried to make invisible, that was not a small ending. That was victory. If you have ever seen an older person in your family lose control of their money, their mail, or their own decisions, I would really like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Maribel was right to choose civil justice instead of pushing for criminal charges against Nolan? Do you think Reina deserved forgiveness just because she paid the money back? And if you have parents or grandparents getting older, ask them one simple question. Do they know who holds their power of attorney, and can they see their own accounts whenever they want? If stories about family betrayal, quiet revenge, and legal justice matter to you, stay with this channel. There are more stories here about people who were underestimated, dismissed, and finally heard.